the last 37 days, there have been at least 6 provocations by China across the line of actual control. Tonight, as China employs its strong-arm intimidation tactics, India has hit back with a diplomatic masterstroke by getting America, the US, on our side. Here is how a White House report has called out China for its coercive military action. And then we shall debate.
It's been 193 days since Chinese President Xi Jinping visited India, and the second chapter of India-China relations was scripted in Mamallapuram. But a lot has changed since then. China finds itself globally cornered over the probe into the coronavirus pandemic. A resolution that was strongly backed by India.
China supports the idea of a comprehensive review of the global response to COVID-19 after it is brought under control, to sum up experience and address deficiencies.
At a time when it is facing global backlash, China is using strong-arm tactics along the line of actual control. The latest flashpoint being the build-up at the Galwan Valley in Ladakh as India stares back at Chinese aggression. And backing India completely is the Trump administration, which has called out Beijing's aggression at the border. In a report titled United States Strategic Approach to the People's Republic of China, submitted to the Congress by the White House, America has pointed out how China is employing provocative and military activities with India in complete contradiction by what their leaders proclaim.
On a weekly, monthly, but certainly a very regular basis, has to experience the pinpricks of Chinese military. The constant attempt to shift the norms, to shift what is the status quo, that has to be resisted, whether it's in the South China Sea, where we've done a group sail with India, or whether it's in India's own backyard, both on land as well as in the Indian Ocean.
It's no longer a secret that apart from attempting to use muscle power, China is using its prowess to try and turn other neighbors against India.
The questions which were asked in the later part, as far as the road is concerned to Dipu Lake, I do not see any contradiction in that at all. In fact, the Nepalese ambassador had mentioned that the area east of the Kali Nadi belongs to them. There is no dispute in that whatsoever. The road which we have made is in fact to the west of the river. So I don't know what they are actually agitating about. There are little issues as you go ahead as to where exactly the tri-junction should be. There have never been any problems on this score in the past. There is reason to believe that they might have raised these problems or these issues at the behest of someone else, and that is very much a possibility.
And with United States of America siding with India, the pressure is only mounting on Xi to de-escalate the situation at the line of actual control. Let's debate.
To give us the Chinese perspective on this, Andrew K.P. Leung is joining us from Hong Kong, bottom left of your screen. We have with us also from the US, Donald Camp. He's an adjunct fellow at CISIS and a former senior director, National Security Council. He's joining us from Virginia. Michael Kugelman is deputy director of the Asia program and a senior South Asia associate at the Wilson Center in Washington. Dr. Pramod Jaiswal is Research Director of the Nepal Institute for International Relations from Kathmandu. Dr. Deepak Prakash Bhatt is a Member of Parliament and a member of the International Relations Committee in Nepal. He's live from Kathmandu. And on the Indian perspective, we have Kamal Sibal, former Foreign Secretary, General Harsh Kakkar, Defense Analyst from Lucknow, and Dr. Sudhanshu Trivedi of the BJP. Thank you very much, everyone, for joining us. I want to start with you, Dr. Andrew K.P. Leung. What is China so spooked about? You seem to be overreacting. Your attempts to needle India are quite obvious and transparent, that you are doing this because you anticipate greater trouble in front of you you expect the whole world to be against you, and it is. The whole world is against China. But the more you react in the ways that you have done in Ladakh, in Sikkim, via Nepal, you're making your nervousness obvious. Andrew Leung, why is China so nervous? What really is your apprehension, please? Please tell all of us.
Well, this is truly an inflection point of China's relations with the world. Because China, the growth of China's influence has been increasing by leaps and bounds, but then it causes a lot of problems with other countries. For example, in the United States, China is perceived to be an existential threat to American-led liberal order with China's actions in the South China Sea, perceived deficit in China on human rights, and China's technological advance, threatening again American dominance. But as far as relationship with India, let's go back to the last flashpoint not so long ago over these lines of control. Now, the last skirmish was eventually resolved without breaking out into an all-out confrontation, which is not good for both sides. And of course, now, at a time when China is facing so many headwinds on all fronts, it's counterintuitive for China to stir this up. And obviously,
so that's exactly what I'm asking you. Let me get it comfortable on that, because I agree with you to the point that at this point of time, Mr. Leung, sorry to interrupt, but at this point of time, as I was saying, and Sudhanshu Trivedi of the BJP wants to respond to you, so does Kanwal Sibal. This precise, if you don't mind, Mr. Trivedi, I'll go with Mr. Sibal first. Mr. Kanwal Sibal, you know, at a time when China is facing so many challenges and will face more, why are they trying to stir things up with India?
Well, it is part of their larger policy of confrontation that they have adopted this wolf warrior diplomacy. Their ambassadors abroad are using diplomatic language which is unprecedented. And in many countries, they're openly threatening the local governments of sanctions, of retaliation, of economic sanctions. It is very peculiar. This is not traditional conventional diplomacy, where headquarters do say things in order to convey tough messages. But the role of the ambassador is to keep the channels of communication open and be in a position to be looked upon as someone who would try its hardest to remove misunderstandings and promote an atmosphere of engagement.
Yeah.
But China is doing absolutely the reverse. Now, in South China Sea, they have sunk a Vietnamese vessel. They have encroached into the Indonesian waters for fishing. They have threatened Australia, and in fact, they have imposed tariffs on Australian barley and some other products. And in the case of India, they have stirred up trouble in Ladakh and in Sikkim. And in Sikkim, where the border is well defined, according to the 1890 treaty, there is no border issue between Sikkim and Tibet. And yet they have stirred up trouble there. So it's part of flexing of muscles at a time when the National People's Congress is about to meet, and President Xi presumably is under pressure domestically because of the COVID crisis and everything else. And he needs to show he's fully in charge and that he's capable of standing up to everyone, standing up to the United States and standing up to everybody else in terms of asserting China's rights and its sovereignty.
So you're saying, Kanwal Sibal, I throw this to Donald Camp and Michael Kugelman. To you, Mr. Camp, first, do you also believe that this has got to do with China's internal situation? Here in India, people are absolutely intrigued, if you ask me. We just don't seem to understand what the reason for this is. Sudhanshu Trivedi wanted to come in. You wanted to respond to this. You know, I personally believe that China is pushing its luck. Sudhanshu Trivedi, how would you respond to Andrew K.P. Leung, who looks at it differently from Hong Kong?
I just want to quote that one influential Chinese think tank, that is Chinese Institute of the Contemporary International Relationship, has said that China is likely to face the worst isolation, much worse than in the aftermath of Tiananmen Square. At the time, China was not a global player, not connected with so much with the globe as they are today. And not only this, if you look at the Global Times, whatever has been written in their editorials and others, the language which is being used against the US president is international hooliganism, and even the word like witchcraft has been used. So this shows that there is some sort of nervousness. Even I have read through media that there is a reference given in Global Times and other Chinese think tanks that there can be a military conflict between the US and China. So they have to build up their nuclear arsenal more. So what I think that if you look at the China, they are having trouble with almost all their neighbors, as Mr. Kapil Sibal has pointed out, whether it's Vietnam, Indonesia, Japan, Australia, and now they are entangling with India. So what happens? I think they have now understood that there is going to be make and mar situation. So as a last-ditch attempt, there can be a strategy that if they are able to bully the others, then the others may be subsided.
No, but you know, Andrew
session is commencing on 22nd of May. Definitely, Xi Jinping, who has just taken full control over the last couple of years
Andrew,
with the model that he can go for long
you see, Andrew,
there can be certain threats and challenges from within.
Andrew, I'll tell you one thing, Andrew. You know, this is the view in India, this is the view in London, this is the view in Washington today, this is the view in Manila. The whole world feels this way. You are pushing your luck. You know, you have over the last decade and a half come into great global prominence, but because of your trade equations with the rest of the world. You are overestimating your ability to stand as an isolated country fighting the whole world. Andrew, we are going to call you out. The whole world is going to call you out. Who will you run to? America is calling you out. Mike Pompeo, he warned you against your bullying tactics in the South China Sea. We are calling you out in the South China Sea. Even Vietnam calls you out. Vietnam is absolutely against your expansionist policies. Australia really called you out. You're just a global bully. You think you'll get your way. You know what the Australian foreign minister, how he reacted to your actions of sinking a Vietnamese Finnish fishing boat. You think you can show your power by drowning a Vietnamese fishing boat in the South China Sea? Do you think you're in any position to take on the world? Malaysia has called you out. Malaysia has called you out. You hacked into their systems. Philippines is warning you openly. You realize, Andrew, what's happening? You know, UK sent ships to the South China Sea. Don't forget. You see, nobody is scared of China anymore, Andrew. We are going to call you out. We are going to take you on. You need the world on your side. You act too smart. You get ahead of yourself. It's going to be bad for Beijing. Andrew. You know, so you can bully a small country like Nepal. That also you should not do. I have guests from Nepal. I hope they see reason. But Andrew, I hope you understand what I'm saying.
Can I respond?
Yes,
sir?
please, if you would like to.
Can I respond, sir?
Yeah, please do.
Well, I think that if you ask a lot of countries around the world, who is the biggest bully that would put its country's agenda ahead of everyone else? That's America first. You know, China has never put boots on the ground invading other countries. But I think that what's happening now is that China has now become bigger. I mean, even a panda, if you grow to about a 1,000-ton panda, you're going to scare everybody. But of course, China is now learning a great deal from its rhetoric, from the kind of wolf warrior kind of diplomacy, from its actions in the South China Sea. And I think what the world needs is not to provoke China any further,
Who's provoking you?
Provoke a regional war.
No,
It's
one
not
second.
going to
I
do
get Michael
anybody any
Kogelman
good.
in. Michael, one second. Andrew, let's get all sides on this conversation. We feel very strongly about this in India. You see, whether you like it or not, Andrew, you gave COVID to the whole world. You lied to the whole world. You denied the fact that it had human-to-human transmission. You hid it in Wuhan. You know, you're gloating about the fact that you managed it. You fudged your figures. You provoked the world. How dare China tell anyone it's the rest of the world provoking it? I'd like Michael to respond to it. Michael, according to Andrew, China is the global victim and the subject of provocation from the rest of the world. I'd like you to respond, please.
Well, listen, from here in the United States, I think the position is very clear that the Trump administration specifically has, not just recently, but for its entire time in power, has taken a very strong maximalist, hardline position on Beijing. You know, when the administration released its very first national security strategy in 2017, it declared strategic rivalry as the top U.S. national security threat, which suggests that for the Trump administration, China is a national security threat and its biggest national security threat. And this is how things have played out over the last 2 years and certainly over the last few weeks. And when you have the remarks of those such as Ambassador Alice Wells, State Department official focused on South Asia, that have been very critical about China's activities in terms of its border dispute with India and its activities in the South China Sea, I think that's a case of the region, South Asia, India, getting caught up in this very toxic rivalry between the U.S. and China, which I do not think will change. And in fact, I think we've seen that the pandemic is not going to make things change at all. The U.S.-China rivalry will continue to be very strong, very toxic, regardless of who the next U.S. president is, I should say as well. But I would argue that China, in my view, seems to be testing India with a number of provocations in recent years, including the Doklam standoff, trying to test India to see how far it would go to respond. So I think there are certainly provocative activities. But for me, the big takeaway is that you just have this incredibly toxic U.S.-China relationship that's going to unfortunately succeed in dragging in a number of regions, countries into it, perhaps in ways that they would prefer not happen.
Yeah, Michael, you mentioned there, let me get the view of Nepal also. My own perspective for a second before that is that, you know, the way China is doing it is very obvious. Let me take the example of Bhutan or Nepal. You know, they finance bloggers to create a pro-China, anti-India sentiment. These tactics don't usually work. If a country stares back, you mentioned Doklam, Michael, rightly so. Well, in Doklam, the Chinese did not gain anything. They were the ones who transgressed. There was a 73-day standoff, and China had to relent. And India, in fact, increased its military presence in the Pangong Tso Lake and the Galwan Valley in Ladakh, should China take any misstep. So India is responding in a very solid way and looking China back, staring it back. Let's take the view of our friends in Nepal, please. To my friends in Nepal, once again, Dr. Pramod Jaiswal, Dr. Deepak Bhatt, let me begin by telling you, your long-standing, dependable friends are in India. I know that very often on occasions, especially when there is stress in the Nepalese economy or society, people train their guns on India. But you know, Dr. Deepak Bhatt, you're a politician. Your best friends, are in India. The second point I would make to you is the entire world is against China. I mentioned a few countries. You see, and Dr. Deepak Bhatt, your greatest enemy and the people who will harm you the most and damage and question your sovereignty is China. After all, you do know, China even claims that Mount Everest is not in Nepal. China says Mount Everest is part of China. How can you be even dealing with this country? They will try and challenge and question your self-respect and your sovereignty in a few months, I can assure you, Dr. Bhatt.
Now I've lost it.
Dr. Bhatt, I can't hear you.
Very cordial relations with
Yeah, go on.
India
I can hear you now.
China
Go on.
as well. and in that regards, we don't have any anonymity, and the border dispute regarding China or in between Nepal and China, regarding the Sagarmatha, the Mount Everest or the Chomolungma in Chinese language, what they have been doing on the Chinese side, which doesn't bother Nepal, and the highest peak of the Mount Everest is on the Nepal side. So we don't have any dispute between Nepal and China.
You're willing to give up Mount Everest?
India, yes, we have a border dispute in Limpiadura and origin of the Mahakali River, which have been enforced by India for the last about 40 years. And so
no, 1 second. Dr. Bhatt, listen, I just want to tell you this. Dr. Pramod Jaiswal and Dr. Bhatt, see, you are under some kind of Chinese hypnosis. They've hypnotized you, I don't know using what. They are claiming Mount Everest, point
it's
number one.
No,
allow me to complete. Allow me to complete. Allow me to complete.
Or something like that.
No, but Dr. Bhatt, I have a right to have my views. You can counter me as harshly as you wish. They are claiming Mount Everest, you are not complaining. They are encroaching on your land. They have taken away your land, right? You are not complaining. They have officially hacked into all your government websites. You are not complaining. They are interfering in your politics. You are not complaining. I just want to know, you need to realize China is a friend to no one, especially now. The more you move with China, Nepal also, which has a long land boundary with India, will be isolated to the rest of the world. Dr. Jaiswal, I am sure you understand, it's a question of your country's self-respect as well. Dr. Jaiswal, Dr. Bhatt, Dr. Jaiswal, yes?
Oh, yeah.
Would you like to respond to that?
I mean, we really have special relations with India, but this does not mean that we can give up our land either to China or to India. We have border dispute on Susta and Kalapani, and Indian government has accepted it. But
we've never accepted it.
We have to resolve it through dialogue and through. We also have problem with China. We will be raising it, but it is our duty to raise. It's not New Delhi's duty to raise the dispute between Nepal and China. We are doing it through different channels. Here at the moment, through the Indian television, what we can request is that Indian government and Nepal government should sit together and resolve the
We shall not sit.
The border dispute is there between the two countries.
There is no border dispute.
About it since 6 decades, and there is no response.
There is no border dispute. China is using you now.
The Nepalese Prime Minister and
when you come out of your hypnotized state, you will realize they've hypnotized you for a moment.
In 2014, Nepalese Prime Minister Sushil Parela said that they will resolve all the issues, and there was no response. In 2015, when India and your best friend China signed a joint statement, and you talk about Lipule, we raised voice, and there was no response from India or China.
So
what happened when
Dr. Jaiswal,
you keep quiet, but when there is a problem between you two, you point to us. At the moment, on 8th of May,
Dr. Jaiswal
inaugurated the road, we responded. There is nothing to bring China
Dr. Jaiswal, I'll tell you,
we'll deal with it. Thank you for your suggestion. But here, what we can suggest to the Indian government is that Nepal and India have border disputes, and both the
we don't have any dispute with you. You're trying to create one. We refuse to entertain any thoughts of a dispute. You are our friends. You are our best friends. You are our long-standing friends. And sometimes when friends want to fight, one side has to say that we are not interested in fighting with you. No, Dr. Jaiswal. Dr. Jaiswal, let me. Dr. Jaiswal, you are our friends. You want to fight with us because you've been temporarily hypnotized by Nepal, by China. Dr. Jaiswal, the one thing.
And they're trying to negotiate. They're trying to sit on the table and resolve.
Dr. Jaiswal, listen. Dr. Jaiswal.
Bringing China just because you have to, I think there's no sense to it.
No, Dr. Jaiswal, we are your friends. You have been put into the boxing ring by China. They have hypnotized you. We will not box with you. We will not fight with you. I'd like to go to Donald Camp, please, for a minute, in Virginia.
There's a huge China phobia.
Sir, India and China will forever be friends. No, sir. No, sir, there's no conflict possibility there. I just want to.
And Nepal and India have very
I just want to. Thank you, Dr. Jaiswal. Let me get in another view from the US. Dr. 1 minute. Donald Camp. If I may now pass the baton to you. We all know. No, sir. 1 minute. Our friend from Nepal. Sir, we are not.
Unnecessary TV debate. Spoiling the relation is of no use.
No, sir. We'll have good relations with you. As you say, there's no confrontational position from my side. Donald Camp. The Chinese believe in the art of war. They want to subdue the enemy without fighting. They believe that the wise warrior avoids the battle. And they know, as was written in the art of war, that the wise warrior avoids the battle. Now, are they trying to provoke the world? Is needling India some kind of a litmus test? You know, because they've needled India in Sikkim, in Ladakh, and now through China. I see a pattern here. Do you think this is using India as a litmus test, provoking India, or do you think it's a start of a bigger global strategy?
I will take the point of view that, in fact, China is needling the world. We are obviously very concerned about what's happening in the South China Sea. And we're also worried about what's happening on the border in the Himalayas. As you know, we were quite supportive of India's problems in Doklam. And we have always been supportive of India's border disputes with China. We've always supported the McMahon line. And as you heard from Alice Wells a few minutes ago, the State Department, we've been very concerned about Chinese aggression. I don't think China wants a war. I certainly hope not, but they need to end their provocations.
Why are they pushing it? Is this only because of the delusion of a global supremacy, or is there something else? You see what happened, Donald. I want to raise this with you. 3 weeks back, India changed, and Michael would follow this closely. India modified its FDI and FPI rules. We have very tight scrutiny of foreign portfolio investors from China now, because any investment from China goes through a special layer of government approval. Is this to do with business alone?
I doubt if it's quite that narrow, shall we say. I think that they are, frankly, trying to distract us all from the problems that are created by the coronavirus. One thing. Not that that's entirely China's problem, but it started in China. Now we're all dealing with it. I think that, frankly, they are looking for other outlets. And unfortunately, the borders in Western China and in Arunachal Pradesh and Bhutan are also a problem. So I'm not sure it's coordinated on the Beijing side, but it certainly is an issue for all of us.
Yeah, but what's the sentiment in India? I want to get General Harsh Kakkar from Lucknow. The more they do this, my question to you, General Kakkar, is India prepared in the short term? Should this needling get more obvious, more aggressive? Militarily, are we prepared enough as of now?
As far as India is concerned, militarily, we are fully prepared. In fact, if you've been actually updating yourself on the situation. Wherever required, you've got troops acclimatized, you move them forward, you've got everything prepared. But somewhere I want to highlight that we're missing out major reasons as to why China has suddenly begun needling. If you look at the Chinese strategy, it flows in two parts. Nations which are within its range, it is applying military pressure. Nations which are away, it's going in for economic pressure or diplomatic pressure. You look at the way the Chinese ambassadors, following the wolf warrior concept, acted in parts of Europe. The economic pressure going on to Australia, possibly now next would be New Zealand. The attempted military pressure on India and the nations in the near neighborhood. Why is it suddenly flowing? One is pressure on account of COVID, on account of corona flowing from the US. The second, if you read recent articles coming out in the Global Times, They're talking about India becoming an economic power and taking in companies which are moving out from China.
Yes.
Now, which are the nations that they're needling? Vietnam, Malaysia, Indonesia, India. Now, these are the nations where the companies are heading into. So basically, all this is falling into a pattern where China is trying to project that none of these countries are secure. We can threaten their national security, therefore your investment is not going to be safe.
Yeah.
But as far as India is concerned, it is well aware. It's happened in Doklam, it's happened in the 630 odd standoffs that we've had in 2019, the 130 odd transgressions that have taken place, the few recent standoffs that have taken place, that India is not going to step back. We are ready for any escalation because we know it's in our area, we know we are right, and we know we can stand up to China.
Yeah.
They're also aware because they've seen the way the Indian army has been post 67, 68, it's never backed down.
Yeah, you see, Andrew, I hope you heard that. I want Sudhanshu also into it. I just want you, Andrew, and I want anyone, I hope clips of this are shown across China. I hope the people in China do understand how strong India is, how clear India is. And if China is in panic, Andrew, Sudhanshu Trivedi is a spokesperson of the ruling party, the BJP, will tell you, the more you get into the panic, the more enjoyable it is for us to watch you in panic, because China in panic is a very interesting sight. You are in panic because, Donald, Michael, everyone knows you don't know how to deal with India anymore. We have stopped your anti-dumping. Companies looking to shift base from China are coming to India. You are worried about the fact that we are leading the WHO executive board. We'll expose you there. We have a fairly good emerging equation with the United States. We're internationally very compatible, this Indian government last 6 years, very internationally compatible with the rest of the world, very realistic. We have strong economic, defense, military ties with the rest of the world. Sudhanshu wants to tell you something. See, whatever your situation is, we feel bad for China. You should not be in a bad situation, but it's your own doing, Andrew. Sudhanshu, please. Sudhanshu.
Arnab.
Well, can I respond?
Sudhanshu will say something to you. You can respond after that. Sudhanshu.
First, I will say something.
By the day of
Sudhanshu.
So,
reading
Okay, Sudhanshu, let him. One of you, please.
Because well, I think very few countries understand what China really wants. I mean, this is, as I said, it's counterintuitive that with this coronavirus crisis, China is trying to stir things up for itself.
Yeah.
I mean, it doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
I mean, do you think China is that stupid?
I hope not.
I think that this is obviously a kind of on two fronts. Firstly, China is now growing to be so strong and so powerful economically that it threatens a lot of countries. So, particularly the United States. And now coming back to India, don't forget India has long had a non-ally policy. I don't think that India would give that up a non-ally policy. But of course, when India feels its interests are threatened, obviously this anti-China rhetoric carried with America's China scares.
I have limited time. I'd like Sudhanshu Trivedi to respond to you briefly, and then Kamal also. Yeah, Sudhanshu Trivedi.
There is a no intention of government of India to China also.
Heavily dependent upon export. In case of any conflict, the geographical location of China, whether it starts with the China Sea or the Indo-Pacific Command or the Indian Ocean, their export will be heavily affected. And if you look at the internal situation of the China, you might be knowing, sir, that in the Central Committee of the Communist Party, no person...
Sudhanshu, I also want to go back to Kamal Sibal for a bit. Kamal Sibal, you've been watching foreign policy for an extremely long time. I only feel China is overreacting, preparing itself. Maybe this is just positioning. But I think what they're not realizing is the unique situation where they are placed against a lot of countries. They're trying to, as they say, pick on two battles at the same time. That's my view. What's your take?
Well, China has got into a very powerful position internationally in a very rapid time frame. Within 30 years, they become the second most powerful country in the world. But their international experience, diplomatic experience, is very limited. They have been, even in the United Nations, they have kept a low profile. They have not taken the lead on anything. They have tried to avoid, playing active politics, etc., etc. And then the second problem with China, as I understand, is that they think in hierarchical terms. It is inbuilt into them. And that middle kingdom complex is really there. So they really don't know how to relate with the world. Even this Belt and Road Initiative, which they're trying to project as something very benign, is actually intended to link the rest of the world to China and make them dependent on China. And China is now using the interdependence that has been created because of the entry into the WTO and the willingness of the rest of the world to give them hold on critical supply chains. They're using that interdependence as a weapon. They've weaponized globalization. They have weaponized interdependence. And this is something which they don't understand.
Yeah.
And now they have taken on frontally the United States of America. At the same time, instead of cutting their losses, they're confronting all their neighbors, including India.
Mr. Sibal, short of time, so I'm going to cut you short. One last sentence. I have not given enough time to everyone, but I'm really sorry for that. Andrew K.P. Leung, the biggest mistake the Chinese are making, they think that nobody in the world understands them. I think we understand you perfectly, sir. And that has become what used to be your strength is now turning out to be a little bit of your weakness. We'll have this conversation again. To my friends in Nepal, please understand your best and long-term friends are here in India, in Mumbai, in Delhi, in Assam, in Kolkata. We are your real friends. Thank you very much for joining us on this interesting chat. Ladies and gentlemen, debate number 2 on why the opposition broke up on the issue they themselves raised of migrants in a few minutes.